Boo! I'm sorry to frighten you there, but I want to start off this video with a little bit of a spooky atmosphere, seeing as we're going to be talking about a very spooky book. Yes, sir, today we are going to be talking about a book that sent shivers down the spines of all the poor elementary school kids that stumbled upon it. A particularly pernicious collection of creepery, if you will. Scary stories to tell in the dark. Now, this book has quite a reputation about it, and it's not hard to see why. Take a look at some of these absolutely grotesque illustrations found in the book. Now, I first read this book when I was in the 3rd grade. I was interested in reading something really creepy, so I picked it out of my classroom library, and as a little scaredy cat, I read through the entire thing. I just barely survived. I have such vivid memories of me slowly making my way through this book, just having an absolute existential crisis while the rest of my table group is sitting there in silent reading, just absolutely devouring the magic treehouse. But now I'm a much older scaredy cat, and I wanted to revisit this book to see if it still chills my bones to this very day. So let's get into this thing. So before we go any further, we need to address the elephant in the room, which is the illustrations. I don't know what demon they summoned out of hell to draw these things, but I love him, and I'm wondering if I can summon him to do some illustrations for my own book I'm working on. This is a joke, please do not haunt me, demons. But for real, these pictures are horrifying to this day, and I don't think this book would be such a pop culture icon if it wasn't filled with just these absolutely horrifying pictures. Just look at this page. What business does this have being in an elementary school? I remember jumping out of my combined desk chair thing back in the 3rd grade when I saw this. But on the real, I do actually love this art. I think these creepy pictures add so much to the stories, which are honestly kind of a pretty basic affair. The book is obviously filled with scary stories that are split into different sections based on the kind of story they are. It's more of a collection of common American folk horror stories, but I think the structure of the book is cool. We start off with a section literally just named Ah! The heck? The section actually starts with this picture that accurately portrays my feelings about the current US presidential election. That's pretty neat. All of these stories are intended to be told out loud to your friends, hence the name Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. And in this particular section, you're supposed to jump at and scream at your friends, and if any of my buddies tried to do this to me, I would probably just punch them in the face. One of the stories in this section that just absolutely cracks me up is about a guy's uncle who's just walking down the road, and then he sees another guy who he's afraid of, but the other guy is also afraid of the uncle, and they just keep walking down the road and getting closer and closer to each other, and when they look at each other, you're just supposed to go, "Ah!" and scream at your friends. What even is that? I think the pictures that we're seeing on the front of this book don't really sell the aspect of here's this really scary story where two strangers walk at each other and at the end you just scream at somebody. Good one, cool, that really creeped me out. The creepiest story in this section, in my opinion, is one where this old lady is at her home. She's just this withered old woman, and she gets really lonely, so she asks for somebody to come visit her, and then just body parts start falling through her chimney, and they eventually reassemble themselves into this grotesque, horrifying man, and then you just go, "Ah!" You scream at your friends. Go figure. That's what all the stories are about in this section. So cool, good one. A little bit creepy, but yeah, just this screaming thing at the end still confuses me. And if you haven't noticed already, this book actually does handle some kind of grotesque and kind of gruesome subject matter with the way it describes and depicts corpses and dead bodies. It's pretty freaky, honestly. And I think it's for this reason that this book is commonly challenged or banned in American elementary schools, which I think is really lame. I think kids need to learn how to be scared, and that it can be really fun for them. Being scared in general is just kind of a fun thing. That's why people like horror books. The book actually opens with the author talking about how he's compiled all these different scary stories from all these different people throughout the US. He says that we as humans like to be scared because we find it thrilling and exciting and we're gonna have a heart attack, which I think is true. I think that's pretty fun. I mean, having a heart attack sounds a lot less fun, but the idea that I could have a heart attack by seeing something scary is kind of thrilling in a sort of weird, existential, morbid kind of way. I think the bigger reason this book is commonly challenged or banned has more to do with the freaky illustrations, but I also love those really freaky, weird pictures that whoever, again, the demon they summoned out of hell drew. They're just really awesome. I think they're so cool. Like, imagine getting this, like, weird kid looking for this big toe, like, tattooed on your back. That would just be the hardest tattoo ever. If anybody who's watching this does that, I'll give you, like, $30. I don't make any money from YouTube, so I can't give you a lot of money, but please get this weird kid sitting in the garden with his hoe looking for the weird toe tattooed on your back. That would go so hard. They actually reprinted the book in 2010 with different illustrations. They got a different guy to do it this time. And while the new artist I do think is like really talented and obviously is a very good artist, it just doesn't have the same sauce that the old art does. Like, don't try to replace this to make sure it can go into elementary school libraries. Like, keep those horrifying pictures. That's like the entire appeal of the book, honestly. The next section of the book is about like spooky ghosts, and it has a story called The Thing that really messed me up as a kid. These two buddies are just like sitting around on a fence post looking at a field, just like talking, having a good time when they see something like crawling through the field that looks like a human. One of them goes to investigate and he finds like this horrifying skeleton, weird, creepy, corpse-looking thing, and he just like is like, well, I should probably go up and touch it to make sure it's real. That would not have been my first choice. I would not think that I need to go up and touch the horrifying skeleton man to prove its existence. I think seeing that thing is enough just to like make me pee my pants and never sleep another night for the rest of my life. But anyways, the guy runs up to the creepy monster, he looks at it, it's this horrifying skeleton corpse thing, and he freaks out and runs away. The guy, not the monster, which is of course understandable. I don't know what you expected to happen. That was always going to happen. But then years later, when the guy who looked at this thing dies, it remarks that when he is sick on his deathbed, he looks exactly like the thing that he saw all those years ago in the turnip field. All of that like cosmic, weird premonition stuff really messes me up. There's a scene very similar to that in a movie called Lake Mungo, which is just absolutely horrifying and made me unable to sleep for the rest of the night. After all the ghost stories are done, we get stories about like modern urban legends. So we hear the one about like the escaped criminal with the hook hand that almost kills the two people, and we get the one of like the high beams and the girl who's being followed on her way home. I think those urban legend stories are really fun. Near the end, we get a collection of funny stories. One of them that I actually think is pretty funny is this situation where this lady is like, she lives in like a top story apartment and she keeps getting a call from a mysterious man who says his name is the Viper and he's coming up to get her, and she gets really stressed out about the whole thing. Finally, the Viper shows up to the door and he's just like this small German man who says, "I am the Viper. I have come to wash and wipe the windows." That was probably a horrible German accent, but I think the story is funny. The one funny story that actually kind of messes me up is one where this guy talks about how every single night he gets turned into a horse by this old witch, and then she like rides him every night through the countryside. His buddy doesn't believe him, so he's like, "Yo, switch beds with me, and at night this witch is gonna come and turn you into a horse." So they do that, and the witch shows up and puts this like the bridle on the guy, and he turns into a horse and she rides him throughout the countryside. But then he turns back into a human and he steals the magic bridle from the witch and puts it on her, and then he takes her and rides her throughout the countryside, and he goes to a blacksmith and gets like horseshoes put on her as a horse. And then he goes to the witch's house who like has a husband, which I just think is really funny. It's like, oh yeah, you know, my wife, the witch, that creepy old witch, yeah, we've been happily married for 30 years. But anyway, he shows up with this horse who he doesn't know is actually his wife, and he's like, "Yo, let me trade a horse for you." And he's like, "Okay, I'll trade you my horse." And then later that night, the horse that is the witch turns back into just being a normal human witch, and she has horseshoes nailed to her hands and her feet because he got horseshoes put on her, and that's just like really creepy and gross to me. I don't know why. Overall, I really like scary stories to tell in the dark. It can feel a little bit generic at times because it's just like a bunch of stories this person compiled, and it doesn't mess me up now like it used to when I was a kid. But I think the drawings are really, really fun, and I think it just adds so much like atmosphere and creepiness to this book. I also think that children's horror in general is just like very important and a cool genre, and we need more of it in the world today. Like, I loved stuff like Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark when I was younger, and I think kids need that kind of stuff. They need to learn how to be scared. It's a really important aspect in today's life. So yes, I am actively vying for the traumatization of many children by reading scary stories to tell in the dark. But I did it, and I turned out all right, I think. Maybe not. I mean, I'm making YouTube videos, so who knows? But yeah, I would recommend reading this book. I think it's a whole ton of fun. Did you read this book growing up? Do you know about it? Did it freak you out like it messed me up? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from you guys. And I think that's going to do it for this video. I know this one was a lot shorter than what I normally do. I wanted to just kind of experiment with something more edited, a shorter piece of content, something with a little bit more energy. So please, if you like this, please subscribe to me. Please give me a like, give me a comment, all the typical YouTube stuff. I love making these kinds of videos. I'm trying to hit 500 subs by the end of the summer, so please, please, please subscribe. It means a lot to me, and I will see you all later very soon with a new video. See ya.